Thank you very much. Point I want to make, and then a couple of questions to ask. The point is, and you were, I think, there, Director Hayes, we were down along the border. There's a lot of manipulation of these unaccompanied minors by people coming into the country. We were told that literally only 1% of adult males in 2015 that were coming across that border had an unaccompanied child with them, and it was 50% now. So it's clearly, some of these kids are being used by adults that think it enhances their chances of getting in the country and being able to stay. I don't know how you deal with that, but it's something we ought to recognize that they're having to confront down there. It was very interesting to see, and again, the money Congress voted gave them the capability. They were doing DNA tests on selected individuals just to see if the people were related. About 1 out of 3 of the people they tested were not related in the manner described. So this is, these children have been used literally in these kinds of cases by people trying to get into the country illegally and by cartels, and that's just a fact. And you're confronted, and we asked you to deal with it, and you don't do the apprehensions. You're just, you're dealing with the kids that we turn over to you. Question I have, and there's a tension here, and I know we're all trying to get to the right point, but a tension between getting them placed as quickly as possible and giving them the best care that we can give them after a very traumatic experience, because you don't have them there, as the commander pointed out, very long, and as you've pointed out. So could you describe a little bit how you handle that dilemma, and what, in what ways, if any, does the care follow the child? Or you might not even have had time to actually assess the full needs of the child in the amount of time that you have them there. So this is a real problem area, I think.
Thank you, Congressman. To your point, I know of a recent example where a child was in our care for 3 or 4 days before she was discharged to her mother. It was not a separation. And so, if there is circumstances surrounding, what happened back in home country, the journey, and then coming into our care, I mean, she was only with our shelter for maybe 3.5 days before, where I think is a more appropriate environment, she moved with her mom. So, that is a question that, that I would not seek to answer. I'm not a mental health clinician, but again, I receive counsel from a large number of them, and their focus, again, not knowing exactly how long the children are going to be in our care, they focus on stabilizing the child and making sure that the child feels secure. Because I think, to a point earlier, they do view, initially at least, all of us as kind of the same bucket in regards to the U.S. government. But we see that as they spend more time in an HHS shelter, and it's, it's like not in detention, and they're surrounded by medical professionals and clinicians and youth care workers and other kids, their comfort level and their confidence in our team does absolutely increase, and we learn more about the child and his or her journey and their history, and as that stuff is told to them, then that is incorporated into the clinical work that our team does. But again, to the OIG report's point, it is tough when you really don't know how long you're going to have that child, and the licensed mental health professionals tell us that there is a hesitation to want to try to get into that too deep if they might be gone within a week or 2.
Yeah, Commander, if I could, I'd like your thoughts on this, in terms of, again, we obviously want to place them as quickly as we can in an appropriate environment. How do we make sure, and again, these kids have been traumatized before they get here in many cases, either by conditions at home or the journey. What are your thoughts on how we make sure that while we're placing them rapidly, we can both diagnose the problem and see if there's something that we can do about it? I mean, they move out of HHS's care pretty rapidly, and that's got to be a challenge in this area.
Yes, sir. There are 3 things we have to do, and I want to be really clear, both as a person who's managed this program and as a clinician. They're hard. They're hard, but they're necessary. The first thing we have to do is we have to build every one of our programs from a trauma-informed lens, so that not just the minute that the child is sitting with his or her clinician, but every moment that they're in the program, we're doing what we can to mitigate the traumatic experiences they've sustained, as well as the distress of the time that they spend spend in congregate care. The second thing that we have to do is we have to provide both individual and group modality psychotherapeutic interventions to every child. These are not a random cross-section of children. The life experiences of children, particularly for the more than 90% of the children in the OR program who come from the northern triangle of Central America, these are children literally coming from the worst places on earth to be a child, where the vast majority of these children have observed homicides, have experienced personal traumatic loss, have been victimized themselves through physical assaults and sexual assaults. That is not uncommon in this program, that is the norm. So the second is we need to have those methods in place, recognizing all of the incredible challenges to doing that. And the third is that we need to continue to work, as we do, with sponsors to identify the resources that they can access individually in the communities where they live to provide continuing care for the children. I want to be really clear, all of these things are incredibly hard, and that's why the guidance from OIG matters. We are not failing at an easy thing. We are continuing to struggle at an incredibly difficult thing, and I'm very proud of what my colleagues in ORR do every day on this problem.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.